Next question is here.
Hi.
Hi.
My name's Charles 7.
Hi.
I'm kind of blown away by this whole thing. I have to say to everybody that's organized this is, for me, this is a bit of a revelation and a phenomena. I've spent the last 5 years of my life in the law courts, in the high courts. I went after 10 very corrupt organizations, and I sued them, and in 2006 I won.
Great.
I can actually tell you the name of the organizations. It's a very, very long story.
Sure.
But my case has been buried. It's been buried because they didn't want it to be known that
Really?
black woman from actually live in West London, from nowhere land, sued 10 corporations and won. I studied law myself.
Wow.
In order to do it. And in the process, I suffered death threats, surveillance,
I bet.
and a number of witnesses. I collected witness statements about what these organizations were doing from a number of people. We took it to the High Court, and we won a landmark victory. I recently saw the ZEITGEIST, and I was kind of blown away by the whole fact that there are a number of people that are aware of what is going on and actually want to do something about it. I physically was put in a position where I had to act. I watched your documentary, and what comes across to me is that for a lot of people it is entertainment. Even though, obviously, as a content, a lot of people come away and it becomes a forum for debate and intelligent talk and discussing of various different groups, Illuminati, Masonic orders, common purpose in this country. There's a whole lot of the Bilderbergers or whatever. You know, it becomes a forum for those kind of discussions. But generally, what I see on a wider scale is basically like the young man in front of me just asked. People don't actually know what to do about it. Now, I have another kind of solution. I understand what you're saying, but I actually think that as somebody who's gone through, I'm a layperson. I studied law off my own back just to do this. And I've spent 5 years of my life doing it. And what I believe is that you have to also have an active role and tackle the judiciary. You have to actually go after some of these people.
Sure.
It's, you know, even with the 9/11, there's all this talk about all conspiracy theories about the 9/11, that it was done by the American government, etc., etc. But I don't understand, with all this evidence that is being unearthed, why there has been no cases brought up against anybody. This is so I'm very interested in what you're doing. There's a number of us in the UK that are very, very serious people. We're interested in running nights like this and joining forces with anybody here, anybody that wants to get involved, talk to us after. And we are, like you, trying to form a collective. We don't have a name at ZEITGEIST, but as long as we're coming from the same place, I think that people should... What do you think about that, tackling the judiciary? What do you personally think about that?
We have to use the tools that are available to us, and what you just advocated is definitely a point. At this point in time, it's extremely relevant that we use this system to expose the corporate structure, to expose, of course, there have been cases brought against 9/11, for 9/11, but they've always been dismissed because it's been squashed so tremendously by the court system is very much owned, and that's a big part of it too, which is very problematic, especially when it comes to high government-based things. Corporate stuff you can go after, as you said, it was suppressed, which doesn't surprise me. You know, there's like a big corporate, as denoted in this film, there's a big corporate lawsuit against Chevron because they dumped about 18 times the amount of oil that the Exxon Valdez did, but they did it deliberately into the rainforests of the Amazon. And, you know, these things have to happen. They have to be done. But these elements, these corruptions are going to keep happening as long as this system's in place. So the analogy to me is that we can keep stomping on the ants coming out from under the refrigerator, or we can go find the spoiled food and get rid of the spoiled food, because otherwise the ants are just going to keep coming. And that's my broad disposition. But I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I just don't think that's the end.
What was your name again? Charles. if you could stick around for the open mic, I'm sure we can discuss this more, but this is not really the time for comments.
The media? Well, hold on. I'm sorry.
I want a question from somebody who hasn't spoken, so Diana.
Thank you. This is actually sort of a personal question.
Okay.
As I'm sure you're aware, there's a kind of backlash against you on the internet, and some of it, as might be expected, is from, you know, sort of the rabid so-called Christians that say the whole thing is anti-Jesus. Fine. But what worries me a bit is that some of the people, it's almost, we've become so paranoid, I guess, as a culture, that people who actually believe a lot of the content of your film are also suggesting that you're part of the disinformation campaign yourself.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, like, how that affects you personally, how you deal with the absurdity of that, and if you're worried for your own safety, or what do you think about all that?
I've looked at the sources of a lot of that. People email me a lot of stuff about that. I have people like Alex Jones who have chosen to directly offend and assault me verbally and do everything he can to basically put everything I say down, which is amazing to me. And I feel that, for example, he has triggered this for more than anybody else. I've had people in the religious community try to make websites to disprove things, but I've never had a hate campaign against me. But this new idea that this is the New World Order, that this is the Illuminati, they go through the film and they say, ooh, he's got a triangle with a sun in it. It must be the fucking Illuminati. And I just think it's so incredible. And Alex Jones, I'm sure a lot of you guys have listened to him. And I have very little comment on that.
I also have a similar question, actually, which I've seen a lot of people ask online, which is you making money from selling the films. I'll leave you to respond to that. Do you make money from selling the films?
I sell the DVDs for $5. I put the thing online for free the day the first one came out. The second one came out. The first one was actually a free production I did in Lower Manhattan, and I had no idea that I would ever get any interest. And it's actually very illegal, and I had to go back retroactively. I think the fact that I sell it for $5, which gives me about $1.50 in my pocket after shipping, and that put it on for free immediately after I had it up on the internet. I mean, immediately after I released it on the Artemis Film Festival, I put it up there. I think my altruism comes through. I spent about $120,000 on that movie, and luckily I do fairly well in my general bullshit commercial slave world in New York. So I'm willing to sacrifice that, and I'm not poor. I'm going to hopefully make my money back through time with this because it gets popular. But I think it's altruistic enough. Anyone who thinks I'm trying to make money off of it, I don't think they get the larger picture. Obviously, I have to make some kind of money because I have to live too. So
yeah, I think anybody who says that really doesn't understand the costs of making a good film.
Greetings. It's quite interesting that you said that I see the paradox in this. So you're actually saying that the system is going to crash, the monetary system?
Well, it is crashing.
It is crashing right now. So because I've been hearing this since I was conscious, that the system is going to crash.
Well.
So, and then there comes a story, because when you become self-sufficient, like for example, you start transition towns or other beautiful projects, you have to have a financial backbone. I also see yourself having a financial backbone by doing this project. So in a way you're saying get out of the system, but in a way you're also saying, but it's okay to stay in the system to do something good.
Well, unfortunately, no one can escape the system.
Okay, but so actually you're saying like use your common sense.
Yes, absolutely. I'm saying
because that's important to say also to the public, not to raise like a lot of panic, get out of your job, or just keep working in the nuclear plants and everything will work out by itself.
Well, no, I think that there's a certain degree of rejection that it can occur, outside of your general survival. Obviously, there is a paradox here, and I totally understand that, and I can't say that it's an easy answer, but first of all, you have to realize these base, simple things, I don't respect what I have to do in my advertising nonsense that I do in New York as a freelance editor. What?
I love it, advertisement, for the good things.
Well, nevertheless, I understand what I have to do, and I try to conduct myself in the least greed-based orientation I can. Because I don't want to go too far into this, but the business structure is a chiseling mechanism of everyone basically chiseling off of everybody else to get as much money as they can. You know, a businessman walks in and sits down at a table, and there's another businessman across from him, and one's selling something, one's buying something. They're engaging in negotiation, but all they're really doing is trying to screw each other over as best they can. And this goes on every day, all over the world, thousands and millions of times a day, on multiple levels. Like, for example, in our relationships, men sometimes traditionally think that they own their girlfriends or wives. There's these ownership elements that actually occur in like human relationships, and I think that's a distortion too. I mean, obviously there's a commitment between a relationship, but to think that a woman or a man owns each other in some way, like my wife, you lost your wife. Why didn't you hang on to your wife? You know, shit like that. It's very pervasive and it's very sick. So being aware of that and being conscious of that, while understanding you have to survive and you have to submit, I mean, that's the fine line that you have to walk until some change is pushed forward. So I understand what you mean, by all means. Thank you.
Hi, Joseph.
Hi.
What do you think of Barack Obama, and do you think he'll be good for America?
Obama? No. Well, I don't know. I doubt that. Obama is when you look at his backers, and that's what most people in America don't look at. They don't look at who's actually behind the scenes. First of all, Obama, I think, was the made man a long time ago. McCain had multiple opportunities to go after Obama for all these incredible weaknesses, and he never did, for one. Two, Obama crushed McCain in his overall financing. As I say in ZEITGEIST addendum, the more money you have, the more media you're going to get, the more money you have, the higher your odds. So Obama was about 150%, I think it was like 600 million for Obama and 320 million for McCain was the overall financing. That's a lot. And then when you realize that Obama's backers are pure Wall Street, I mean, he just named as his Treasury Secretary the head of the New York Fed. And I'm like, what? This guy's not for change. He's got to be kidding. And so anyway, then one of his main backers that you should be very fearful of is a man named Zbigniew Brzezinski. So Brzezinski is very much behind this guy. And if you don't know who he is, look him up. He's a very despotic man. I'm fearing war with Russia at this point because Brzezinski is a big Russia hater. And he has been after Russia. He was the one that started the Soviet-Afghan war that finally led to the actual collapse of the Soviet Union, the final collapse. It was Soviet-Afghan war. And he's the one that instigated, he's the one that funded the Mujahideen, which became Al-Qaeda. He's the one that did all of that. So I wish Obama was what he said he was, but he's not. I'll believe the change when I see it. No. Yeah. What's that? Who? Oh, he did? Did he really? I didn't even know that. Oh, that's unbelievable. Of course he's going to win. He's got he was saying that there was a 30-minute TV commercial on all the networks apparently in the States. I missed this. I don't have a television, honestly. But yeah, 2 nights before the election. So they've been positioning him for a long time. They knew, first of all, if you look at the statistics, they knew a Democrat was going to come in office because this black and white paradigm that people use, all the Republicans have destroyed so much, the Republicans, have destroyed so much in this particular administration, in Bush, that it was a 9 out of 10 chance that a Democrat would be put in position because that's how this mass psychology works. They oscillate back and forth depending on the behavior of the prior president. And of course, the lowest rated president since Nixon was George Bush, the Nixon administration for Watergate, if you're familiar with that. So, yeah, it's a big fraud. It's a big scam. He was positioned.
So I'm just going to take a couple more questions from people that haven't spoken yet. Sorry.
What's that?
Hello. We've got a stall round the corner here called Simpol, and I agree with you. The starting point of any discussion should be that everyone and everything is interconnected, and only from there, can we come to some kind of agreement.
Sure.
But what I see the that what you're expanding the Venus project and also solving, changing the way, going to an era where we don't use money and there are no laws. I think that the Simple campaign would help that, because I see it as a transition period, which is it's a form of open source global politics and a campaign to drive all governments to cooperate with each other. So it's under that maxim that everyone and everything is interconnected, and I can't be free unless you're free.
Right.
And it's a non-hierarchical method to achieve that. And I could see that it would complement the Zeitgeist addendum film.
I think that's a very interesting idea.
So it's by people around the world sign up to it and put forward policy content to be implemented globally by countries implementing these policies simultaneously, so no one suffers an economic competitive disadvantage by moving first.
Right.
So and so by joining it, you put yourself on equal footing with other people around the world, and therefore it breaks down barriers of stupid ideas like, oh, we're different, or I can't think of any stupid ideas at the moment. But so yeah, I'd like to invite you to my stall afterwards and have a chat with you about that. And I've got a book I've written.
Okay, all right, sure. I think that's in theory what you're saying is fantastic. How it would actually play out, given in the existing political structure and the monetary system. I'd be interested to consider that.
We expound monetary reform is one of the policies put forward by our supporters, where. We say that money should be issued into the system interest-free by social institutions rather than by private banking institutions that have a privilege of issuing the money into the system.
There's many corrective measures that can be made in the current monetary structure to help things, but I think in transition that should happen, and I totally agree, but we can't get lost in that because we have to move forward. But I totally agree with your ideas.
I think you very eloquently described the enormous flaws in the financial system in America, in the world, the way we think, materialism and so on. You applied a very exact and a very elegant science to it. In the latter part of your film with the Venus Project, it's a science, but I'm not sure it's that exact a science. I don't think that the answers that we're looking for can necessarily be described on a stage by you right now or by anybody else. They may be things outside of our current way of thinking.
Well, obviously.
Has that occurred to you? I think it's boring. This debate has become a platform for people to sort of voice gripes and personal things. I mean, can we not think a little bit more out of the loop rather than talking about tiresome details here?
I'm not sure what your question is, though. What's your question? What's that? Okay. Well, what I would say in general is that I'm not advocating some set system that is, this is it, black and white. When I started learning about the Venus Project, I had numerous questions, and I was actually very skeptical of the concepts because it was so foreign to me. And everything is foreign to everyone continuously as knowledge progresses. In other words, there's always going to be something new to discover. So it's the soul elements, the core attributes that are so important. And those are the fact that our financial system creates aberrant human behavior. Not only psychologically, but structurally, because structurally it's completely manipulative. So you're only as free as your purchasing power will allow, for one, and then you're always in debt, so you're always a slave to the corporate system, for two, because the only way money can be created is out of debt. So you have to get rid of the financial system as a whole. Even if you did something like got rid of interest, which I agree in transition, it still doesn't remove the problem of people competing and taking from each other constantly. You have to have a system that's designed for humans to live together, and our current system is not designed that way. So until we do that, and that's the broad spectrum, that's the core element, and we should all think independently and in novel ways and contribute together to come up, because if we all thought together, it'd be unbelievable what we could do, because there's so many minds at work.
I think the benefit
At this moment, you can see a lot of information that he's done in his books. There are certain things that are very, very complex, and I've actually talked to him that he does not release because he thinks they would be used for destructive purposes. And his genius, because he has so many ideas that are so amazing. He's been ripped off his whole life. This guy, you should read about him. He's amazing. When he was 9 years old, one of his family members hurt themselves in a metal fan. So he designed a fan with rubber blades and took it to a fan company. The fan company kicked him out at 9 years old. And then a week later, or a month later, he goes by the store and he sees his fan in the window. So this guy has been ripped off his entire life. You wouldn't believe the things that he's constructed that have been taken from him repeatedly. He designed a car that was 67 parts. An average Volkswagen is 6,000 parts. He designed this car. It was unbelievable. Anyway, I don't want to go into all this, but it's not open source because he doesn't want people to abuse his ideas because he knows the system as it is. He knows that there are certain things. He has ideas about reducing pollution, how to get rid of things regarding nuclear pollution. He has incredible ideas. And in time... Right.
So that's why it's important, like guys like you.
The thing is, all of his ideas technologically are supplemental to his perspective on the social system. So they're not as relevant. I mean, he has tremendous ideas of efficiency and how to produce so many different things, and there are all sorts of other scientists that do as well. But they're out of line with the structure. Everyone tries to make money. For example, ET3, which is the organization that has the maglev train that goes 4,000 miles an hour, that virtually exists. The reason they're trying to sell it, of course, they don't want to just do it. I mean, obviously, with something that efficient, though, you would never need to sell it. You would need to. It uses 0.1% of the amount of energy that a plane uses, and goes that fast. So, with that type of efficiency, there's no wheels, nothing can wear out, very little maintenance. You could have all the tube stations in London going at lightning speed, and you just build a tube so no one can jump on the tracks. There's all sorts of things you just put your mind to it you can think of. So anyway, it's the social design that's the most important. And that's what I'm advocating more than anything else. And through time, if things progress, his ideas for all of these elements, which are very much out there, broadly speaking, it's just a matter of getting scientific minds to move forward with the specific direction. These things will come forward in more of an open source manner. But in the end, open source is definitely the way to go.
Just going to take the last two questions, and then we're going to move into an open mic.
One second, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Buckminster Fuller is very similar. Right. Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Well, Jacques has been traveling and doing that as well. He just has not been given the acclaim and the recognition. You can find YouTube videos of him on television from the 1970s. Sorry, go ahead.
Hello, hi. I've seen both your movies. Documentaries, rather, I'd call them. I downloaded them for free online. I have two questions. One, my first question is, what would be the result if the world finally stopped using the dollar, the US dollar, as a general means for trade? And secondly, is a personal question. I'd like to know what's your discipline? What did you study?
Okay, the first question is, what would be the result of the dollar? Well, basically, the dollar as the reserve currency has kept America in its hegemonic position for a long time, ever since the 1970s, when Saudi Arabia decided to use the dollar as its petrodollar. And that's been, I think what would happen if the dollar was removed as the world currency, they would just replace it with something else. It would definitely have a strong effect on America, because America has gotten away with so much because every other country needs the dollar to buy oil. So if you want oil in your small country, you have to either take a loan from the World Bank to get the dollar, or you have to go through, which is usually the case, or you have to go and buy the dollar through conversion, which isn't just as easy as converting. They actually have to buy the dollar. So they actually buy bonds, for example, in order to get the dollar, in order to get oil. So if that stops, then it just means further demise for the United States, which is well needed in many ways. But that's basically the ramifications of that. And as far as my discipline, I am a musician, and I studied percussion for many years. That was my training, and then I moved into music because I couldn't make a living wanted as a percussionist, as a musician, as a composer. So I got into the commercial industry in New York, and I was very unrewarding, so I continued my own work. And then I made these two films as an altruistic expression, all my music and stuff. So it's very artistic for me. in multiple ways, not only as a political expression or a humanist expression, but is more so as a general artistic expression, which is why I do so much with effect and things like that. So, thanks. Thank you. Is that it? I see one person with his hand up. Yes? Hi. I see you.
I've just got like one question. Have you taken into account the effects of automation, like increasing technology, and therefore increasing the radio frequency and electromagnetic interference through the entire planet of what you're saying in the Venus Project? We've already seen that, take for example bumblebees, there's 25% the bumblebees that we should have current moment, and that's then going to diversely affect the plant life, and therefore continues up and it affects all life on the planet. Have you taken into account the possible effects that
those are always
cause?
Yes, I've always considered all of that. You know, from obviously in a lot of ways the destruction of the bees is in a lot of ways more important than. I know. Right. Well, there's so much environmental destruction. There's so much destruction on so many levels. The pollution in general from noise and frequency pollution. Like, we have so many things moving around our brains that have never been tested to understand what the real ramifications are. And then, of course, you know, there's so many attributes to it. And the fundamental point is that you can attribute the great majority of these issues to the monetary system because it's coming out of a corporation that wants to cut corners, doesn't do thorough testing, that wants products out for money, or they pollute. You know, Monsanto, companies like this, they use all sorts of crazy stuff and they destroy the environment. And it's so vast how bad things really are on so many levels. And I really think the monetary system and the profit system is to blame more than anything else. So, that's it.
I think in your film you essentially said that any solution that would be possible to solve things like electromagnetic pollution wouldn't be solved unless there was some profit to be made from it. So potentially there are ways to solve that, like what was it, those orgone generator type things, or possibly. I mean, there might be loads of technology out there to deal with electromagnetic pollution we just don't know about because we can't make money from them.
I completely agree.
I just wanted to kind of point out one thing that that seems quite clear to me from seeing Peter's film, is that a lot of people have been asking what the solution is and saying what he, as a leader or as a guide, can give us. But really, it comes down to this idea of us being leaders ourselves.
Right.
And the idea that we, in ourselves, can make a difference just by analysing and looking at ourselves and what's inside us and what we're doing, right down to the minute details of every aspect of our life, because that is the lifeline for our future. And it's not about how we're going to change society and what we're going to build and fast trains, really. It's about us, because that's the only thing that we really know, and that's you. And the change in you is our future, and our future for our children.
Right.
And
exactly.
And I know Brian wants to say something, but I just want to personally thank Peter for coming all this way to America. He really is a champion of I don't know what the cause is, but he really is a champion for us all. And if we can take just some of the messages and the ideas that are in this film and adapt it and use it for our own purposes and groups and formations, then we're really going to go forward in the future. 1 second, sir. Let me finish, because it's important. That we will really go forward in the future and create an amazing civilization, society without boundaries, religions and so forth. And we can do it. We are at a tipping point with massive deadlines crashing towards us, but we can do it. And the addendum shows us a way forward. But it's you, everyone out here, that can do it. And I wish you all the best in the journey.
I just have one. I'd like to just ask one thing of you, your opinion, yeah? Because it was stimulated by what you said about Barack Obama being selected, right? And maybe that's true, maybe it's not true. I was a great supporter of Barack Obama, the whole campaign. And the reason why is because as an animal, I could smell an animal that I felt was in good shape, was healthy, right? And the vehicle of our society needs a driver at this time. There has to be a driver, right? And I'd rather have a driver there. I mean, I could smell George Bush the moment I saw him. You know, I knew he was bad news. You know, I could smell Barack Obama and I say he's good news. You know, and he can't do our work for us. You know, he's a lens through which we can focus our action. But what I'm concerned about, if we tear down the good people, you know, I don't want to see society crash in a way where there's marauders in the streets and women being raped and kids starving and all the terrible things that happen when a society breaks down. Yes, I'm glad it's breaking down, but I don't want it to break down in a totally chaotic way. And I think it's really important that we support the leaders that come forward, that stand in the light, that we don't tear them down.
No, I completely agree. Thank you. I completely agree. I don't want to see blood running in the streets or anything like that as well. I do believe that the breakdown is a natural culmination that people need to understand and that people need to use in their awareness and their waking up of what's actually happening. I think that it's for every instability creates change, and this instability is going to have very strong ramifications. I got to tell you, I don't think Barack is going to help much of anything. What he's going to do is going to continue to bail out the larger establishments. I think he'll be a little bit nicer. He's going to look a little bit cleaner. He's going to be better. I think it's very awesome in a poetic sense that there's a non-white person in the White House. That's great. But as far as the actual relevance of what his backing is, of what he is, and of what I think is going to happen over the course of his administration, of what I think Barack will actually do, and again, I hope I'm surprised. I think you're going to see a lot more of the same. It's just going to be a little bit more tame. They're not going to start invading places for a while. They're not going to do anything. They're going to try their best to get a hold of the destabilization that's occurring. But there's only so much they can do. The system is out of his hands. There's really nothing he can do except renovate the system from top to bottom, which he is not going to do. I mean, this collapse is of its own accord, and it's been happening for a long time. It's contrived in one sense, and it's a natural culmination on the other. I don't believe in the conspiracy theory that it's one big contrived thing and they're trying to take down everything, you know, like pushing a button. It's not that simple. It's not that cut and dry. What it is a Ponzi scheme that's failing, that they've been using for their own means for a long time, and they've reached the point of tip, and it's tipping right now. They've reached the tipping point, and that's what's happening. I don't think Barack is going to help anything like that. Will he be a better face on it than Bush? Absolutely. Will he make people feel a little bit better? Yes. And there is a certain psychological ramification to that, because you need people to be placated. You don't want people to get the real sense of what's happening, because they will run to their bank and take all their money out, and you'll have bank runs, which is the final step of a complete failure of the system. And that's when, you know, things will really get bad. So I hope. And when I say these things to people, I don't want people to run to their banks and get their money out, because we have to maintain stability on our own accord. I don't run to the bank and get my money out, even though I know what's possible. So, in other words, I don't want to see the system hit rock bottom per se. I want to see it go just far enough where people say, wait a minute, this isn't good. Let's reevaluate what's happening here, and then start working from a grassroots level. But, you know, things are very much out of our control. I have a feeling things are going to get a lot worse than we anticipate. And things are so bad in the States that they don't report. It's really unbelievable. So it's nothing that's been seen in a long, long time, and since the Great Depression. I could see it getting worse than the Great Depression. The only thing that makes it a little bit better than the Great Depression is because there's a better technological infrastructure to deal with the breakdown. It's not as cut and dry as it was in 1929, where it was definitive. This, they can play the game. They can still give people stupid stuff and stupid gadgets. They can still, you know, they can still placate the system with media, tons of media entertainment that didn't exist in 1929. They can still have news reports out there of people saying, you know, everything's fine, keep going to work, you know, it's just, you know, some bad loans, it's all right. And people buy it. And as long as they buy it, the psychology will prevail, and they'll slowly try to dig themselves out of the hole. But it's such a deep hole they have to dig themselves out of. And back to my final point, there's nothing Barack Obama can do. There's nothing he can do to save the system unless he kicked out the entire central bank. If Barack Obama kicks out the entire central bank, then I'd be in support of him, because that's what he has to do. If he was truly moral, that's exactly what he would do. But I believe he's bought and paid for him, for the most part. So, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.